just know that we're all going through that, and there are lots of resources out there to help you, whether it's peer groups, whether it's, videos that you can watch, books you can read, mentors you can find, but stay in the game, please. The world needs more entrepreneurs. It's what makes the world such a wonderful place, are entrepreneurs.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I love meeting people who are from the Midwest or Midwest adjacent area where I am from, because I always know it's going to be a really great conversation. And it's going to be authentic and earnest. And I'm really excited to bring you Colin Hirdman today. Colin, you started your first company a week after you graduated from university. You've never worked for anybody else. And I'm looking at your LinkedIn and I just see co-founder from your dating all the way back. That is truly amazing.
Yeah, it was just serendipity. Yeah, I started my first company a week after I graduated from college, never took a business accounting or marketing class, graduated with a criminal justice degree, and just kind of learned it through the world of hard knocks, and feel very fortunate. Never had to create a resume. Very fortunate, with the business partners that I have and all the employees I've had over the years. So, but yeah, it's a journey that I hope many others take, because the world needs more entrepreneurs.
Yes, it truly does. And you're really proving the case that if you're an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur, because you've had many different types of ventures. So I am curious, what took you from a degree in criminal justice to deciding to embark on a completely different type of journey?
Yeah, I think some of it, there was probably a little bit of unrest even when I was in college, where, it was hard for me to pick a major. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I ended up just choosing criminal justice because I could get out within 4 years with a liberal arts education and, decide if I wanted to go get more schooling or not. And I just happened to, meet a guy at my dad's 50th birthday party about halfway through my senior year. And he's wondering what I was going to be doing. And I said, no, I'm not really sure. And so he and my dad and I met, and he was like, well, I'm thinking about, starting this side business with my other business, and, would you like to join? And I'm like, sure. And I ended up taking that over. So so I had that company for about a decade. Then I sold it. And then 2007 is when I started Monkey Island Ventures with Josh and Zach.
Fantastic. And it sounds like you probably had some really good mentorship during that time.
Yeah, Mike was, older than I was by probably 20, 25 years. And so there was some good mentorship there. And then I got pretty, involved with different organizations here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, where I was able to, connect with, other entrepreneurs, other business owners, get involved in committees, and start getting kind of ingratiated into the business community.
Yeah, that's such a great way to learn. And I am a university professor. I'm also studying my MBA right now in AI. And the funny thing is, our professors are saying, well, there's no textbook because it changes every day. So it's really, yes, we're getting a degree because we're setting up constructs around certain business problems that we want to solve. But other than that, we are just having to look up and research on our own and figure out which are the best tools. And that's pretty much what you do in the world of business. I also came to marketing, branding, public relations organically. I didn't go to school for that.
Right.
So what would you say are some of the advantages that you've seen to you having this really organic opportunity to trial and error, right? To learn from other people, to join organizations and have this network and have to figure it out on your own for all of this time versus maybe some of your counterparts who did get a degree and maybe are, on par with you, or maybe they had less success?
Yeah, I mean, I think, part of life is luck, right? I mean, there's good luck, there's bad luck. And I think that plays a huge role, someone's success. I think really the number one trait, I think, of a successful entrepreneur is perseverance. I have lots of friends that are successful in business, and they're all over the board. Some are in tech, some are in real estate, some are kind of the trades, and all of those are great. All of those are fine. I think part of it is just finding out, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? Marrying that up with, goals and whatnot. But I think at the end of the day, kind of to what you were touching on, this adage that I've come up with, which is, everyone is making up everything all the time. And we are, whether it's the AI companies or whether it's, you and I, other entrepreneurs, other founders, everybody's just making it all up as we go. And it doesn't matter whether you're Apple or us, we're all just trying to figure it out all the time. And that's why, I hope that those listening that are entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs realize that the number one thing is just get in the game. And it doesn't need to be a full-time gig. It could be something that's part-time that you're doing on the side and something that you're interested in that, you're starting to just maybe build up a little bit of a client base on the side. So I think the main thing is just to hone in on what is it that interests you and ensure that sooner than later, that it's also meeting business needs. I can talk from personal experience of having launched businesses where we thought it was a good idea. We may have even talked to prospects and they thought it was a good idea. But once we launched it and put it out in the market, it wasn't a good idea because nobody was buying it. So it's not fun trying to build a business and not generating revenue. So you do also have to marry up what you're interested in with also meeting customer needs. What is it that they want or need that they're willing to pay for?
Yeah, such a good point. So many of us have so many ideas that we want to put out into the world, but if you don't have a customer base, if you're not filling a need for people, then you're not going to have a business, right? It was funny. I was speaking to somebody who said, you think you have a business just because you've filed paperwork, but you don't have a business until you have customers.
Yeah, no, that's exactly true.
So what was it? Because you segue perfectly into my next line of questioning in terms of what did you find was your true passion point, and what part of the business was it, and was it a specific industry, and what's the difference between that and when you tried to do some of these other businesses that maybe weren't as successful?
I think more than anything, the passion point is more so about how I want to live my life, and part of it is looking out into kind of toward end of life, right? When I'm in hopefully my later years, 80s and 90s, I can look back on a life where I took risk, that I tried things, that I failed, that I learned from those things, but that I also had successes. And going through those kind of the ups and downs of, building businesses is what I really enjoy. And I also, I want to have a life lived with some level of risk that is allowing me to take on those challenges that maybe highly risk averse people wouldn't do. But I think there's things that you can do to kind of lower the level of risk in your own mind. And part of that is, just thinking about like what are the worst things that would happen if I did this? And I remember going to a CEO event where they had these CEOs at all these different levels of companies doing these different presentations. And one of them said, from a risk averse mindset, he always felt that it was much more risk averse to just go and work for someone else, where one day they could hire you, another day they could fire you, and you're completely out of a job. Whereas if you were able to build up a business, not all of your customers are going to stop in one day, right? If you start to lose customers, the business starts going, you can analyze, you can look, and you generally have a long enough runway where you're able to make changes and hopefully get your business back up where it needs to be. And so for him, and I think for me as well, the toughest part is just getting the business up off the ground. And if you're able to do that, again, start it on the side. But I think that's a wonderful way for people to just kind of dip their toe into it. And I think more and more people are looking at entrepreneurship as a viable option. And I also think things have changed in the last decade or two in terms of failure. I think people are much more accepting of failure, much more supportive of each other if somebody's going through a difficult time. Whereas early in my career, failure was, nobody would talk about it. It was viewed as a horrible thing and something wrong with you. But no one can be successful without going through failures.
Yeah, it's really turned to where we want to hear about the good and the bad because it makes it more human. It makes it more authentic.
Totally.
It's relatable, and that it gives us a source of inspiration. If you went through this, I don't even know how many companies you've started, Colin, but if you can go through this and find some success in some, and some were maybe to your experiments, then that helps other people realize this is something I can do and I should try.
Right. No, that's right. I think part of it is, for me, is, getting a foundation of a business or two that is working, that you can start bringing in employees, or at least you have enough flexibility for the one or two businesses that are working that then if there's something else that really want to try, you have the resources, you have the foundation underneath you to try those other things out that you might not be in a position to try if you didn't already have the one or two successful businesses already underneath you. And there's nothing wrong with diversification as well. I think there's real strength in being diversified. With all that being said, the caveat is you also don't want to be spread too thin, and you want to make sure you put in enough time into, your business to have it running well and that you're paying attention to what needs to be paid attention to. But I think those things kind of also get easier to manage the more you do it and the longer you've done it.
Yeah. What, just if you don't mind sharing, was one of those businesses that you thought, this is a really great idea, everybody needs this, and then it ended up being one of your experiments?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch I could choose from. But one that I think would be very tangible would be, so I started to buy real estate back in 2008. And in 2014, 2015, like the Internet of Things, like the Nest thermostat and those things were really taking off. Well, I had gotten some, real high water bills for a few of my properties where, like 1 month of water ended up costing like $500 because there was like a leak at the property. I'm like, well, we should build a smart water meter. And so we got together our idea and we ended up launching a Kickstarter, and we got funded. And I think we raised like 120,000, 130,000 on Kickstarter. We did a couple other small subsequent raises of money to fund, and we actually built a smart water meter, a hardware product that would clamp around the pipe in your home. You plug it in, connect it to your Wi-Fi, and then you download our app and you can actually see your water usage in real time. Now, when we launched this, California was going through a drought and the timing seemed great. And so we ended up, talking to like insurance companies who might want to place our product and talk to partners and all this. And we could not get enough market traction. And we ended up shuttering that product down a couple of years ago. And the issue was, I think, with that particular idea is that, there's the bell curve of adoption. Yeah. And Kickstarter, you get a lot of people right at the front end of that bell curve who are willing to try like new things. And we had enough people on the front end of the bell curve that would try it to get us funded through Kickstarter, but there just wasn't ever a big enough market for us to capture. And so that we, spent a good amount of years and money in that. I mean, we had other things going on as well, but significant amount of time put into that. So that would be one of the failures that we had. But, one of the common threads that I've seen with some of the SaaS products that we launched that we weren't able to scale is, we had the idea. And then there's a book called like The Mom Test, which helps you test your idea on people before you build it without divulging too much of what it is you're building and everything. I recommend that book, but you can go through a lot of diligence on the front end of an idea, but you're going to have to get to a point at which you put the product in the market. And that's really going to tell you whether it has any legs or not, because we have built products just because we think it's a great idea and it failed. We built products where we did the diligence and we talked to people and, we got a bunch of early, signups and all this. And then once we launched, none of them ended up using the product. Okay. So there is a level of risk. And that's why if you can start off with the idea and being, very, very concrete around, what the pain point is, who it's intended for. And ideally, if you have some experience with that pain yourself, I think those are all good indicators that are at least kind of leading you down the road of having a higher chance of your idea or your product actually taking hold.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all great points and things people really need to think about. On the other hand, sometimes we launch things without having done any of that and they work. I'd love to hear about one of those experiences.
Yeah, no, for sure. So kind of back in the earlier years of Twitter, so one of the things we were thinking about was, okay, like, I bet Twitter users would like to meet other Twitter users like around them geographically. So we built a product called Local Tweeps, where you would log into our product with your Twitter credentials, and then you would just put in your zip code, and it would associate you then with that zip code, city, and state. And then a tweet would go out through your account saying, hey, I just signed up on Local Tweeps at zip code 55108. You should sign up too. Something like that, right? Well, a couple of kind of Twitter influencers ended up signing up. And within like 48 hours of us launching that product, we signed up like over 30,000 people. It was a trending topic on Twitter. Again, this is in the earlier days of Twitter. And we didn't make any money on it. We didn't really have a monetization model. And so we launched that, and then we parlayed that experience into a product called SMB Tweet, where we would grow a Twitter following for local retail establishments like coffee shops, where they would want local Twitter users that could actually walk in and buy a coffee. And we would organically grow their following. And that product actually was doing a nice amount of revenue. We were charging like $19.95 a month. And I think our cost was like 60 cents a month per user. It was great. And we were scaling it. But, we had a little bit of issues with, finding really great product market fit. And then Twitter started changing their terms of use and ended up having to submarine the product. And so that's one of the pitfalls of building on top of like a really big network. But all that being said is we didn't really do any diligence around Local Tweeps or SMB Tweet, yet we were able to sign up tens of thousands of people, and we were able to generate, a few $100,000 in revenue through those products. So those are just kind of examples of, putting something out there where you think it would be of use and, address a pain point.
100%. So I have this is a two-parter. So we can start with the first question, which is about the word we and your partners. I want to talk about that. And then you've also shifted a lot to actually really utilizing a different platform that is a social media platform, but I think one that we're all finding a lot of value from more than any other platform, which is LinkedIn. But first, let's talk about, you've been using the word we, which says that you have partners. And I understand that these partners are childhood friends of yours, which I think is probably unheard of in most businesses. Being able to go into business with friends, know that they have complementary skill sets and that you just will continue to work well together. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. What is the company name? Where did it get its start? And who are these partners?
Yeah. Well, appreciate that question. So Josh and Zach are my two business partners. We've been in business since 2007. We started Monkey Island Ventures, and that's kind of our umbrella company. That company was named after a park that we used to play at when we were kids. And Josh was literally my next door neighbor since we were 5 years old, and Zach moved into the neighborhood not too long after that. So very, very fortunate to have them as business partners. We definitely each have our strengths and weaknesses. But one of the things, we've always put our friendship ahead of business. We even came up kind of with our 5 core values, which are all start with F. So it's freedom, finance, family, friendship, and fun.
Yeah.
And so we really live by those core values. And we've gone through a ton of ups and downs, through successes and through failures. And you're going to go through that as an entrepreneur no matter what. And having business partners like them and sharing in that experience of those ups and downs is something that I wouldn't trade for any other experience. It's just been phenomenal. We, scrum every morning at 8:15. We get together for, a couple hours once a week in person. Each of us are kind of running a different company under our portfolio, but just having that camaraderie, supporting one another, being able to discuss personal stuff as well as business stuff with each other has just been wonderful. So I would highly encourage anyone listening that, going into business with people that you innately trust and that also share your values of, the experience of building businesses is more important than the amount of money that you make. Yes, we want to build, successful big businesses that, benefit us and benefit our employees and of course, our customers. But at the same time, money is secondary to the experience that we have together, and that's primary. And I think that's what's allowed us to get through a lot of ups and downs together.
Amazing. Yeah. I've been somebody who has worked with people I've been friends with. Sometimes it's worked out, sometimes it hasn't. But I think because we went in making certain assumptions about how the business is going to be run or how each other work, and then finding out that that wasn't the case necessarily.
Sure. Right.
So it's great that you had this really strong foundation. You were able to immediately, you can have open and honest conversation from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's times, when Josh and I, in our digital marketing company would be, sitting with meeting room with a prospect, and their team. And, we're talking and they're talking and then they're saying something, and Josh and I just look at each other and we like know what each other are already thinking, and so like, yeah, it's great. It's wonderful having that kind of a connection.
Yeah, fantastic. And you said you each run different businesses, so that is kind of also taking advantage of your strengths.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So besides the SaaS companies that we've started, we also have some service-based companies. And, I would highly recommend your audience, aspiring entrepreneurs, starting with service-based companies where you can start charging for value right away. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a great way to go. Nathan Barry wrote an article called The Ladders of Wealth Creation. They kind of talk about the 4 ladders of working for someone else, your own service-based business, productized services, and products, and just how you can build out different businesses within kind of those different ladders. Highly recommend. Just Google ladders of wealth creation. But with the different businesses that we have, Josh is the president of Agurian, which is our digital marketing company, and Zach is the CEO of Cloudburst, which is our software development company. Agurian typically works with marketing professionals within organizations, within I'd say medium-sized companies. Cloudburst does software development for entrepreneurs, and we leverage low code, no code, and AI to really reduce cost and time to market. And we even have a local meetup that we do called No Code Coffee, which is super fun, bring the community together. But yeah, working with entrepreneurs to help them scale some software. And then Rainmaker is what I'm working on. I launched that early last year. I'd been doing a lot of growth hacking through cold email and LinkedIn automation over the last 6-7 years. And I went to Josh and Zach and said, I think I could build a real business off of this process and software that I have for LinkedIn. And so they said, all right, go for it. So my customers range from solopreneurs and fractionals up to my biggest client, 7 other salespeople are on the platform. But what I love about what I do is I'm simply just automating what best practices within LinkedIn. And when I think about LinkedIn, there's kind of 3 layers in how I think about it. One is philosophically, then one is around audience building, and the last around specific campaigns. And really quickly, just from a philosophical standpoint, people want to be successful on LinkedIn. It's about being authentic and genuine, which I think most people are. That's kind of table stakes. The second is coming with an educational mindset, because nobody wants to be sold on LinkedIn. Also coming with an experimentation mindset, right? You're going to try different, features and functions within LinkedIn. I think that's one of the strengths of LinkedIn is that, it is the only business social network. It has a monopoly on that. But there's all these different ways to engage with first connections on LinkedIn in ways that can be really empowering for you, as an entrepreneur. And then finally, and this is what I think is most important, is you have to understand the pains and barriers your prospects are trying to overcome. You need to figure out what is it they want to be educated on and what can you teach. So I think if you come into LinkedIn with that mindset of teaching, of really that go-giver mindset, there's a book called The Go-Giver, which I also highly recommend, where you're just sharing your knowledge. And so one of the things that I'm doing for myself is doing a LinkedIn live stream once a week. So I did one 2 weeks ago to fractionals. I did one last week to sales executives. I'm doing one tomorrow to founders. And I'm simply educating them on how they should use LinkedIn to grow their network, their leads, and their sales. And if they ever want to not do things, manually, then maybe they'll come and talk to me about Rainmaker. But I really, set up Rainmaker to be an educational platform. It's something in terms of, very transparent. It's like a white glove SaaS. It's just month to month. There's no contract. So I thought, when I was originally thinking of launching it early last year, how can I come to the market in a way that's very authentic, that's disarming, where it doesn't feel like I'm selling them, that I'm just providing education. And I think for anybody else listening, that's how you would also want to approach LinkedIn, is just create connections. I think every week building out new first connections to your ideal client profiles is incredibly important, because what that ever-growing audience allows you to do is when you do have an asset you want to share, you can share it with more people. When you do post an organic posts on LinkedIn, more of your ICPs have the potential of seeing it. When you want to do an event or a live stream on LinkedIn, you now have a larger audience in which could attend it. And those are all the things that once you put those things in place, it gives you the opportunity then to share your Calendly in ways that doesn't feel salesy, right? Or giving an offer or sharing an asset. And that's all about, just good old fashioned marketing, right? It's about timing. It's about repetition. It's about being top of mind. And you can accomplish all those things on LinkedIn without being salesy. And I think being salesy too fast is just a lazy approach. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that do that.
I think I've mostly dodged the era of, well, I do still get occasional emails, cold emails, but people will build lists with your ideal persona and they're going to scrape the internet and do all these things that, probably shouldn't be doing, buy lists, whatever. And there are also the people who say, oh, I see we have this and this in common, would love to connect. I'm always open to a connection. But it drives me crazy when the next email is them trying to sell me something or get me into their mastermind. I'm like, or, oh, you just, I saw that you added a new job. Let me talk to you about your 401k. Well, did I say that I wanted to talk about, have I given any hints? Don't presume you know something about me.
That's exactly right.
We haven't had this conversation. So I'm always interested to see I like some of the techniques you've outlined, right? And I'd love to hear other ones that you have, because you did say you set up automations. And I have encountered sometimes when somebody sent me an email or a message and I was like, is this you or is this your bot? And it was them. But they completely forgotten how we knew each other, which was kind of funny. But then other times you can tell it's a bot and you'll put in a response and then it just completely ignores it.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. So I'll talk about kind of the general setup that I do for myself and for my clients. And anybody can do these things manually. You don't have to use Rainmaker or automation. You can do it all manually. So let me address your question really quick, though. When someone responds to a message, I have nothing to do with that, nor does any of the automations we're doing. So that goes into someone's LinkedIn inbox. At that point, it's their responsibility to carry that conversation on organically where that needs to go. That's the opportunity to actually start to engage with someone. So the basics that I'll share is, from like a network perspective, network building perspective, I'm typically using Sales Navigator to build out the audiences. If my client doesn't have Sales Navigator, I'll use mine. There's two other ways in which I'd recommend potentially building audiences. One are LinkedIn events. So if one of your direct competitors is doing a LinkedIn event, or maybe an industry organization is doing a LinkedIn event on a topic that your business solves for, you can go attend that event, and then you can see everyone else that's also attending that event. So you could actually pull out everybody that's in that event that's, in the LA area that has, this title or is in this industry. And you could actually start building out a list of prospects of people that are publicly raising their hand and are already showing you that they're interested in this topic that your business solves for. So I think events are kind of a great growth hack. Another is using a person as a proxy. So there's a woman named Brenda on LinkedIn. She's got like 70,000 followers, and she's posting all the time on how to use LinkedIn the right way, right? Around organic posting and your profile and all that. And so I connected with her, and because her connections are open, I can actually use Sales Navigator to grab her and then look at all of the second degree connections to me who are maybe founders or sales executives, et cetera, because they're most likely following her because they want to get good LinkedIn content. They want to understand how to grow on LinkedIn. Therefore, they might be interested in Rainmaker. So that's another one, a person as a proxy. Okay. So Sales Navigator, LinkedIn events, and other people as a proxy are great ways to build out your lists. So once you build out an audience, now you need to start activating that. What I'm doing is trying to connect with 25 people a day, Monday through Friday during normal working hours. Okay. So 125 people a week, 500 people a month. Do not use a connection message, just trying to reach out and connect. Now, I can tell you that my account over the years and what I've seen with all of my clients now over the last almost 12 months, you're going to fall in probably to a connection rate in the high teens to low 20s. Okay. That's pretty average. Now, if you're excelling on a list, you're going to be probably around like 30 to 35%. If you're doing poorly on an audience, you're going to be in the, low teens to single digits. Okay, so that's just gives you an idea. You should be able to use this methodology that I'm just explaining now and get a connection rate around 20%. One caveat to the message is I do have a couple of clients where we're doing like pre and post conference connecting, where they're getting a list of people that are going to be attending the conference. And so we'll try and send a message saying, hey, we're both attending this conference, would love to, run into you if you, have time, something like that, right? People a lot of time go to conferences because they do want to meet other people. They want to network and things like that. So that's something that you could certainly test. But generally speaking, we're not using a connection message because it's hard not to sound canned. So,
That was going to
uh,
be one of my questions because,
yeah, yep.
do you use it or not? Sometimes I don't use one only if I've already met the person.
Yep.
Have,
Yep.
but often I'll try to at least put something of like, oh, we met at this conference, or so and so said we should connect, or
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In those cases, use it 100% of the time.
yeah,
So what I'm talking about is more where you're identifying an audience and you
yeah,
just want to build out your network of ICPs. But the nice thing about that 25 a day, Monday through Friday during normal working hours, is it still is under the LinkedIn limits where if you are going to a networking event and you're meeting people in person, whatever, and you want to connect on LinkedIn, you'll still be able to do that. So that's the benefit there. So the other thing that I would say that's very typical is kind of bolting on like a message campaign after someone's connected, where, that first message within 1 to 3 days after connecting, just thank them for the connection. Don't sell, don't even try and help. Just thank them authentically for the connection. If there's a response, then that would show up in your LinkedIn inbox and you take that wherever it is. If there's not a response, then, I'd say probably a week or two later, a second message goes on. That's where you want to start adding value. But that adding value could be as simple as a question. So I have a couple of clients, they're asking a question and they're getting really great response just from the question that they're asking, okay? Because they're understanding the pains or the issues that their prospects are facing. But you might want to share an asset that you've built out or an asset that another company had built out. Maybe you want to invite them to participate in a LinkedIn poll, or maybe you want to invite them to an event. So there's all these different things that you could do that are adding value in that relationship as you're building it. So, one thing that I did for sales executives here in the Twin Cities was I was connecting with a bunch of them and then I thanked them for the connection. And then like a week or two later, I followed up and asked them if they knew of any good networking events in the Twin Cities that they'd recommend, right? So I'm just starting to build up a little bit of relationship. But then what I'm really doing is inviting them to one of my LinkedIn live streams where I teach how to grow your network leads and sales on LinkedIn, right? So now I have a new first connection. I've built out some relationship in a very non-threatening way, and now inviting them to come learn from me. And that is a wonderful, wonderful process that I think, a lot of your audience could start to leverage, which is build out your network, use some non-threatening value-added messaging, share, high-value assets, things like that. And then, ideally, if you can share what your knowledge and what your audience would want to learn about, what could you teach? LinkedIn live streams are a wonderful way to do that. And so, again, Rainmaker is just simply automating out connection requests. It's automating out a series of messages. It's automating out LinkedIn event invites, to get people to actually start attending the events. But you can do all of that manually. You don't need a program or a process that's automated to do that if you want to just do it manually. And I'd highly recommend your audience really start leaning into that because I can tell you it works. It does work.
Yeah. Yeah. And manually maybe something people want to do when they're just starting their business, right? But then as you grow your business, it's not necessarily something that you're going to be able to have a lot of time to do, which is where Rainmaker comes in as a helpful friend, helpful asset.
Right. Yeah. And I built it. There's no contract. It's just month to month. And again, going back to business models, how can you embrace, your prospects in a way that gets them to want to engage with you? And part of it is your pricing. Part of it is, what are the requirements? And I've tried to keep that, fairly low on both the price as well as, no contract and things like that. So I think it's just, great ways of leaning into your audience in ways that are meaningful and that are helpful. And more than anything, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, I love founders. I love entrepreneurs. I want to help more of them be successful. And if anyone ever has questions or thoughts, I'm always open to chat. So
fantastic. Well, of course, we're going to link your LinkedIn under your name in the show notes. And we'll also have rainmakergrows.com in the show notes. Where do you see yourself going next? You have all these businesses, all these great things running. It sounds like you're always coming up with new ideas that are adding so much value to the entrepreneur community. What is the next thing that you want to do, whether it's in your personal life, your professional life?
Personally, just being present for my wife, and I have 2 young boys, and being a part of their lives is really important to me. Spending time with friends and family, I think for most of us, that's really important. I do volunteer on the Minnesota Blockchain Initiative, which is Minnesota's largest nonprofit, where we're kind of codifying the blockchain space around blockchain and crypto. And I've been involved in that space about 5 or 6 years. And there's aspects of that I find just absolutely fascinating, how, it brings in art and finance and law, energy, money, just all these different areas. It's an amazing technology, and blockchain and AI really go hand in hand in a lot of ways. So it'll be fascinating to see over the next 5 to 10 years how those two technologies play off and rely on one another. But, from, actual just business perspective, in 2025, I think with, Agrarian Cloudburst and Rainmaker just continuing to have, those grow, I think we are leaning pretty heavily into AI to better understand how that can kind of fit, across the companies. There is a funding mechanism that Cloudburst has been using for probably 5 or 6 years called a shared success agreement. If you go to sharedsuccessagreement.org, you can learn about it, but really it's where service-based companies, whether you're a solopreneur or not, you can provide your services at a discount for a share of future revenue of the client you're working with. So it's an alternative to equity or debt. It's a very lightweight, easy way for the two parties to get together and create a win-win relationship. So I think Zach and I will probably want to put some more effort behind that as a category, potentially even building out a software product, almost like a marketplace of people that need help around marketing or software development or accounting or whatever, legal. And then finding really then the other side of the marketplace are the people that can offer those services and be willing to do it through a shared success agreement. I think could also really empower a lot of entrepreneurs with the benefit of all these people that would be willing to operate within that kind of contract. So I think that one's kind of hanging out there as like a bigger opportunity for us in 2025. But I think a lot of our focus will be on just continuing to grow the three companies that we have to.
Fantastic. Well, I feel like there are multiple other conversations that we're going to have around blockchain and AI, and then around shared success agreements and some of this work that you're doing. So I will look forward to those conversations. But Colin, I'd love to see if you have one last piece of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs or people who are in their first few years. They're still, seeing a lot of ups and downs, and they just need a little inspiration on what to do next.
Yeah, I'd say for those that haven't gotten started yet, get started. And, that it's easy to say, but really it's also the truth. You can't move it forward until you actually start taking action. And that action is, starting to build a website, start talking to prospects, put in your pricing plan, know what it is you want to offer, start offering it, see if people want it. And for those that have gone through, the first, couple of years and, are kind of feeling the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and running your own business, just know that the struggles you have, the imposter syndrome that you feel, acutely feeling like a failure sometimes, we all feel that. Those are emotions that we are all feeling. And I don't want them to feel, disparaged in any way around, how they feel about themselves, the way they might beat themselves up. It's hard. It is hard, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And so figure out what it is that will kind of help keep you going through those downtimes. And that might mean giving yourself breaks. That might mean, bringing on a business partner. It might mean, firing a difficult client. But just know that we're all going through that. And there are lots of resources out there to help you, whether it's peer groups, whether it's, videos that you can watch, books you can read, mentors you can find. But stay in the game, please. The world needs more entrepreneurs. It's what makes the world such a wonderful place, are entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Amazing. And do you have a quote, a mantra, and you talked about, your, was it 5 Fs earlier that are kind of your purpose and vision, your goals with your business partners, but do you have a family motto, a verse, a poem, some words that just keep you getting through every single day?
I'll hearken back to one that a very, very successful entrepreneur here in Minnesota, one of the most successful ever. And I was lucky enough to have a sit down with him when I was in my early 20s. And, when we sat down, he was probably in his, 70s at the time. And, he'd gone through a lot, but had built some amazing companies. And it was pretty simple. He said, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard is very hard. And so for him, it's like stay in the moment. Just don't look too far out. Just focus on what needs to be done today and, come in, do your work. You will see progress. That, I think, has been really helpful for me too, because we can all catastrophize. We can all, look out in the future and be worried and all that. And, what should I be working on? But just, inch by inch, just focus on the things that are right in front of you. It's very pragmatic. So probably less on the inspiring side, but very pragmatic advice that I think we could do well to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly what we need right now. So thank you for that, Colin. Look, This has been a really wonderful conversation. I love it when I come away from these conversations inspired for my own businesses and my own ventures. And I will look forward to staying in touch. Definitely want to have some other conversations with you in the near future. And thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it on your favorite podcast platform. Please leave us a rating and review, and definitely get in touch with Colin. Follow him on LinkedIn to get his advice for how you can make your business a little better. You can make more connections, and you can grow them into partnerships and clients. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.